Hi everyone, welcome to day 6 of the online Excel training. Today and tomorrow we'll be considering conditional statements. This will really help us in making decisions with Excel formulas. So for example, there are a lot of times whereby you want to take an input with Excel and based on our input produce an output that is customized for the input. A typical example which we'll also be working on is the student sheet grade. If we all know that if a student scores between 70 to 100, they should be graded A. If they scores between 60 to 69, they should be graded B. So how can we implement something like that? How can we regulate our output based on the input we receive? That's what we would actually be working on today. And I've listed out the functions we'll be covering between today and tomorrow. Here are the functions. We'll be starting with the true false. Not a function. True false is actually not a function, but it's a concept you need to understand in Excel because that's like the foundation for conditional statements in Excel. So when you see true false, Excel will naturally return true when a particular statement is correct. So for example, if I come here and I put 5 and I come here also and I put 5 again, then in the third column I now perform a like a check to say this cell F2 is equals to cell G2. Excel immediately tells me it's true. So this means that you actually are comparing two values, and that's what conditional statements are about, comparing values to see whether it's true or false. So based on whether it's true or false, you can now make decisions on that. Now for example, look at this. Immediately I change this to 6, look at what happens. It becomes a false because 5 is not equals to 6. But if I update this formula to say if this is greater than this, it's still false, right? Because 5 is not greater than 6. But if I change this to 7, it becomes true. Do you understand the concept of true and false? So true and false basically means Excel analyzes the condition you've given it and returns a feedback. It returns an output whether that expression you've given Excel is true or is false. Now we know that 7 is greater than 6, so when it checks F7 is greater than F2 rather is greater than G2. But if I put 7 back here, can you see it returns false because 7 is not greater than 7? But then I can change this formula and say greater or equals to. It becomes true because even though 7 is not greater than 7, 7 is equals to 7. So these are the way we actually make checks. Expression while we check expression in Excel. So this helps us to actually build a conditional statement based on whether the value is true or false. If I change this to 8, it's still true, but immediately it becomes, say 6, it becomes false because 6 is not greater, neither is it less than. But if I change this formula to say less, it's not greater, neither is it equals to, but if I change it to less than, it immediately becomes true. I hope you understand that concept. Now, based on this, we can now make a decision. For example, let's call this the first cell. Let's call this the second cell. Okay, now let's write a little formula to say here we'll call this the result. And what should this result do for us? We can say result should return a yes. Instead of true and false, it should return a yes when first cell is greater or equal to second cell. Do you understand this? So basically what we are saying is we want to put a result here, and that result should be yes. That means this blank sheet should be yes if this cell, first cell, is greater or equals to this second cell. Okay, now that's where we're going to write this. Now we're already making the check here. We can already make the check to know if first cell is greater or equals to second cell. Can you see? So we've already done the check here to see F2 is greater or equals to G2, which is what this check is about. But instead of returning true or false, we want it actually to return a yes, just a yes for now. Okay, so how do I write that formula? The template for writing if formula is if, then you put the logical test as it's written here, then you put a comma and you give the value you want it to return if it's true, or a comma, the value you want it to return if it's false. But let's just work on the true value now. We'll say if this is true, because this is already true or false, right? So I just click here to say if it's true or false, comma, then I can say give me a yes. Okay, here you can see it's returning a false, but let's make this 7. Can you see what happens immediately? It returns a yes, because now first cell is now equals to second cell, and if you make it 8 also, it will still return a yes because first cell is greater than second cell. So that's the condition. But then let's make this a little bit more complex and say else return a no. That means if this first cell is not greater or equals to second cell, let's return a no instead of false. You know, before if we have 5 here, to return a false here, but we want to customize it. Instead of returning false, we want it to return a no for us. What do? We now come to that same formula and then we update the formula. Let me write it again so you can actually understand. Is equals to if, remember the syntax I told you, if this conditional statement, if it's true, let it return a yes, comma, separated by a comma. If it's false, then let it return a no. So the if statement can take 3 parameters. One parameter is the condition you want to check. Second parameter is the result you want it to give out if it's yes. The third parameter, which is actually is optional, is the condition you want it to fulfill if it's actually false. So if I return, can you say this returns a false? It returns a no, it's no longer returning a false. So I've been able to customize my output to yes or no based on the operations performed here. Hope you actually understand that. So let's try something else. Let's say boy. Okay, let's call this a gender cell and say boy. Now I want to give a result that would actually tell me it is a boy based on the input or the input here in cell F7. So if it's actually true, I want this result sheet result cell to tell me it is a boy. So I can do this check. If not, then I will tell it to tell me it's a girl. So I'll use if function and then I can do this logical test and say check here. Okay, if F7 is equals to boy. Now note I'm using double quotes here because this is string. This is not number. Now if you actually come here to this first one I didn't have to use double string or anything, double quote or anything, because these are numbers. So when you're dealing with numbers, you don't use double quotes. Immediately you put double quotes in number, it becomes a string. So you can no longer perform arithmetic operations with it or checks. So here I'll just say is equals to if this is equals to say boy, let it return the input is a boy. Okay, else let it say because you actually can put anything here. You may decide not to put gender and put your own name, but let's say it's the input is not a boy. Can you say because it's boy here, it tells me so you put a boy, but immediately I put girl here, it tells me the input is not a boy. Even if I now come here and put female, it still tells me it's not a boy. Even if I put male, it will still tell me it's not a boy because it's doing a check to see if it's actually a boy. Okay, then if it's a boy, it gives you the input is a boy. Else, any other thing you put here, even if it's empty, it tells you the input is not a boy. I hope you understand how if else actually work. Okay, now but sometimes you need to do more than one check. Okay, sometimes you want to do more than a single check, and that's what you do. We call it nested if. Okay, we call it nested if. That's when you need to do more than one check once. Now look at this particular scenario. Remember, I I didn't emphasize a particular condition when I was writing this formula, and that's the condition is yes, even if you don't put boy here, okay, if you put male, male should still be able to tell you the input, excuse me, is a male. So male should still be able to handle the condition, but any other thing may now return it is not a boy. So let's update this formula. Let me write it again. To now say is equals to if this is equals to boy. Okay, then let it return the input is a boy. Okay, but now instead of me putting the else, because I still want to take into consideration another condition, then I put another if here, which says okay, if you've actually analyzed this and it's not a boy, I still want to make another check to say if this same cell, okay, if this is also equals to say male, let's use male this time. Correct this single quote, okay, male, then tell me that the input is still a boy. Okay, else tell me the input is not a boy. Okay, so because of the closing of bracket I've not done, but Excel will do that itself. So here it tells us it's a boy. Now let's change it to male. Can you see? Immediately recognizes and say the input is still a boy. But then if we now change it to a girl, it tells us okay, it's no longer a boy. So when you use boy or male now, it can give you the same input. That means you can do multiple checks, either on a single cell or on different cell. Let's use another example. Let me quickly use another example before we proceed. So here, let's say input 1, input 2, okay? And then let's return the result here in column G. Okay, so I want to check for two things. What kind of scenario? Okay, so let's say, for example, I want this cell to actually check these two cells, and if both of them are correct, give me an output that the result is correct. But if one of them, either of them, is incorrect, give me an output that both of them are not correct. Do you understand? So it checks both of them must be correct for it to tell me that the result is correct. Else, if either of them is not correct or both of them are not correct, then give me a result that the inputs are not correct. So let's try this. What you do is you say if, then you pick this input and you say if this particular content is correct, okay, comma, can you see? So first is checking it to know that if it's correct. Now if it is correct, oh okay, let me change the logic so it will be more straightforward. If this is not correct, then if it's already not correct, just tell us straight up that the inputs are not correct. But then instead of false, I will now say do another check for me to say if this one, okay, 2 is incorrect. If they are not, if it's also not correct, okay, just tell me that the same inputs are not correct. Else, now tell me the inputs are correct. Okay, then let's close this and close the second one. Okay, now, so let me put correct. Can you notice the first output is giving me that the inputs are not correct because they are both blank. So let me put correct here. It still tells me it's not correct, but if I put correct here now, it tells me the inputs are correct because both of them now contain correct. So basically what it first does is it checks this particular cell. If this cell is not correct, okay, it doesn't bother to check the other cell first. Okay, once this one already returns that it's not correct, whatever the input is, as far as it is not correct, even if it is correct space, can you see? Because space is also a character, so even if it's correct space, it tells you that the inputs are not correct. But then if this input is not correct, it now comes back here to check if this one too is correct or not. Now if both of them are correct, it returns that the inputs are correct, else it returns that the inputs are incorrect. Now this particular scenario has a lot of case use. Case uses that you need to actually write scenarios where either two or more conditions are correct or two or more conditions match a particular input. Then based on that you can produce an output. But then there are easier ways to do this thing. Okay, instead of us, and that was taking me to the these logical operators, as we would call them, and, or, and not. Now there are easier ways to do this thing. Look at the long formula I had to write because I want to check this at the same time. There are actually easier ways to do it, and that easier way is by employing this AND function. Remember, my condition is to say this and this must be correct, right? So let's rewrite this formula using the AND function, and to produce the same output. Now, I'll put it here in cell H3 so that we can actually compare. You will see how this other new method is easier. So in case of this, I'll actually put an if condition again, but now I'll put an AND. Okay, and the AND is one, check this. If this is correct, and also check this. If it's also correct. Now, if both of them are correct, just tell me that the inputs are correct. Else, tell me the inputs are not correct. Correct the spelling. Okay. Oh, okay, I should use it. Sorry, let me check this. Okay, so if this is correct and this, okay, sorry, I must close this and here. Okay, then based on this you give an input. Okay, yes. Can you see it's given? Now compare this formula and this formula. Now this one, why you actually have to use nested if, this only use an AND. So what this does is if, but then it analyzes this to see, are these two conditions correct? Now, if you actually know logic, or if you study logic, you will know an AND would only return a true statement when all its conditions are true. Okay, while an OR would return a true result when only one of its inputs are true. So in this case, all these conditions needs to be true before AND will give me true, and before this true statement will work, else it's going to return this false statement. So these two formulas are doing the same thing, only that this one has actually made it a lot easier. And I mean a lot easier in the sense that even if I have 20 inputs, let's create a third input here and say input 3. Okay, and also add this input, that this input must also be correct. What if I want to add that to this formula? All I just have to do is come here and add a new condition to say, okay, this one too should be equals to correct. Okay, so if this one changes, can you see? So it's very easy. This is like a scalable formula. You can actually easily add to it, subtract from it without really cracking your head. For if I want to do the same to this, I have to come here and then write another if condition to say if this is not equals to correct, then tell me the inputs are not correct, right? Yes, else tell me the inputs are correct. Can you say this formula is actually not easy to maintain? Okay, yes, it will work, but the more you expand it, the more you keep expanding it, the more difficult it will be for you to maintain. So it will be difficult for you to maintain if you keep expanding it, but with this particular formula, it's very easy for you. Now let's rewrite this formula to say as far as only one of them contain correct. So let me delete this, so focus on this. As far as only one of them, that means if this one, or this one, anyone, as far as only one of them contain correct, okay, then you should just tell us that it's correct. And that's very easy to do. All I'll just do is just to change this and sign to or. Okay, so even if this one is not showing correct and this one too is not showing correct, it will still tell you it's correct until this one too goes, it tells you it's not correct. But either way, once you have at least one correct in any of the inputs, it tells you it's correct, because that is how all works. So like I said, and will only be true when all its premises, when all its conditions are true, while all would be true when only one of its conditions is true. So when one condition is true, it's just like saying it is either a boy or a girl. So as far as it's either a boy or a girl, I've told the truth. But if I say it is a boy and a girl, that means it has to have both gender types to actually be true. So for and, all conditions must be true. For or, a single condition being true would make it true. Now for not is very easy. Not only means not what you are saying. So for example, remember our true and false statement. If I come here and say 1 is equals to 1, that's basically true. So if I return here and say not this, it will give me a false, because the not of true is false and the not of false is true. So if I update this formula and change the condition and this becomes false, this immediately becomes true. Now what this helps you to do is when you have a scenario whereby two contents must never be the same. Okay, when two contents on your particular cell must never be the same, this comes into play, because it will always use the not sign to negate what is in the other sign, and then they keep checking one another, if you understand what I mean. So that helps you also. Now the other one we will check is is blank statement. Now the is statement, actually is blank should come under is also, because the is statement is also one of the checks, like one of the multiple checks you can do in Excel. So there are different type of is statements, because is also is more like a conditional check that returns a true or a false for you. The only difference between is and if is if would be able to give you an output based on true and false, while is will only tell you that this is true or not, or not true. For example, if I put a text here, okay, let me just call it text. Now if I say this is equals to is, now can you see the options of is? You have a lot of options of is here. Okay, so you can check whether a value is a number, you can check if the value is a text, you can check if the value is not available, if you have if it's a formula, if it's even number, if it's odd number, you can actually check all these things. But so if I want to check if this cell is blank and I say is blank and I check this, it's more like I'm asking a question. Immediately Excel tells me false because this cell is not blank. But immediately I hit the delete button here, can you see it tells me it's true because this cell is now blank. So the is function, there are a lot of variables for it, or there are a lot of functions under the is function that you actually can use. For example, let's use the is even. If you want to check whether a number is even or odd, all you have to just do is use the is even. Okay, and if I check this number, it tells me no, it's not even. But if I change it to even, okay, it tells me yes, it's even. So this kind of formulas will help you check a particular condition. Now I cannot use this condition, feed it into an if statement to make a decision. So here I can now say if this is true, okay, then I can return, okay, so if this is true, then I can return this is an even number. Else I can return this is a odd number. Can you see? So this tells me it's an even number. So even if I press any digit here and randomly I press enter, it tells me it's an even number. Immediately it ends with an odd number, it becomes an odd number. So those are the kind of things you can do with the if statement, because is, so like I said, there are a lot of things you can check if it's blank, if it's error. There's another variable also if it's error. This is also if it's error, if it's even, if it's a formula, if it's logical, if it's a non-text. That means it is not text. If it's non-applicable, if it's if it's a number, you can check it. So let's do it if it's a number. If I say if it's a number and I check this value, it tells me false because blank is not a number. But if I put 1, yes, it tells me it's a number. If I say a number, it tells me false because this is not a number. So let's try this. It's still telling me false. Like I said, if you put the number in double quotes, it is not a number. It will be treated as a string. Okay, so if I say this, it is a number, basically. Hope you understand that. So you can try a lot of this out. Can you say putting a single quote, that means changing a text format. This makes it like a character or like a string. So I can maintain all this because it's not a number anymore. Okay, I'm using like an apostrophe sign to actually change the format of the number, okay, to a string. So you can actually do all these checks with ease, and then based on that use the if statement to check it and make a decision however as you want to have it. So tomorrow we're going to continue from where we stopped, and we're going to conclude this. Then we are going to do our little project on checking student scores. If you score A 70 to 100, it returns a A. If you score 60 to 69, it returns a B, and so on and so forth. Thank you.